Shihan,
Yeah, nice to see you.
mate?
Thank you.
Thank you very much, mate. Your your martial arts journey started at a young age, mate, and your forte has always been karate. But mate, can you talk about where you started, mate? Like, where did you grow up?
Yeah, I was born in New Zealand, but grew up in Tasmania once I got to Australia. Uh, Martial arts came about. I was kind of more into rugby player, and then I actually my mother remarried when I was young, and he used to do kung fu. So the first thing I ever did was 2 years of kung fu under him, which was pretty basic. And then I got to Tasmania, there was no rugby. And so then, of course, I had some friends who got into karate, and it was just, it's sort of blind luck when you first go to a dojo because you're the most uninformed you'll ever be about martial artists because you're a beginner. And so when I started, it was just luck really that I ended up in a dojo that was, very well taught, very well structured. And so, now as I look back at that, you sort of realize how lucky you were because it was just, you assume, as people do, this is what everyone does. But the more you get educated on martial arts, you do realize that that's not the truth at all. All sorts of karates, karate isn't karate. There's multiple different types of practitioner and teacher, and systems of course change, but the type of instructor that you end up with could be anything from super proficient to quite terrible. It's like any product really. And so I was very lucky that I was with a great instructor, and for that part of my career, probably the perfect situation. He was very austere, very about the basics and drilling in your platform and your stances and your balance and all of that type of training, and of course your fitness and your conditioning. So I just had this great, like I say, through no fault of my own, just through blind luck, I just had this great platform to build on where I really understood how important the intricacies of technique was. And there are a lot of things in martial arts that I discovered at that age, that certain things will work because they'll just work at a low proficiency rate. Like you can throw a punch at a 50% proficiency and it'll still have an effect. Won't be great, but it'll have an effect because it's a pretty simple thing. But then there are a lot of technical, more technical techniques that we utilize within any kind of martial art. And if you're not doing it at that high rate, if you're not doing it in that 90th percentile, it kind of just won't work. It just won't work. So people will then just go, well, that technique doesn't work. It's like, it will work. You just need to do it in such a precise way.
Yes.
That, before it's going to have any effect. And any technique that can create an effect is valid. So I think in the beginning, that was one of the things that instructor, his name is Noel. That seems to be a run in my career. I've had lots of Noels in my life.
So what specifically drew you into karate, Shihan?
I think the physicality initially, like I said, I was sort of looking to replace rugby as, it had been taken from me because Tasmania at the time, had no rugby league teams at all. And rugby was it was all AFL down there, and I wasn't an AFL player. So I was just looking for something that I could I'd always had an interest in it. As a young boy, you just sort of, see it and you're exposed to it, whether it's a movie or, which is not real life, but, you're talking about a young kid. So whatever that is to motivate you, I'd sort of always had an interest in it. And then when I started to do it, initially, the physicality drew me to it because it was super physical. Like I said, this guy that I trained with was, you trained until you dropped every night. You just trained super hard. That was the way he was. And so he taught us that work ethic as well. But I think what drew me to it was ultimately the way technique was broken down, and that you could see once you understood it, how it worked, and then how to apply it. And then you got to build the next one. I like that. I like to create a base. I've got this technique and I can do parts of that, and then I can do the next technique and the next technique. And that really appealed to me, that purest mechanical side of it, and understanding that the mechanism that is the human body that we utilize as a fighting implement. That really appealed to me.
Yes.
Yeah.
One thing that really impressed me about you, Shihan, is I know I've had some fantastic mentors over the years, but, I consider you a mentor. And your precision, your timing, the technicality, everything is very focused to enhance the student's performance. So you're very detailed and very structured because you want what's best for your students. Was that something that was taught to you throughout your years of training?
Yeah. I like I said, I kind of fluked the first place I ever went to, and I'm so grateful to that instructor. Like he taught me so much about technique and about and then it had to be, you're striving for perfection, which you can't achieve, but you're always striving for that 90 percentile, to do something, to perform those techniques with. And then I suppose for myself, I just, appreciated that so much. And then as I traveled, I then started to know, oh, wow, I was just this little guy from Tasmania, this little place, so when you go to they call it the mainland, which is something no one ever says unless you live in Tasmania. But when you come to the rest of Australia, which is the bigger cities, and you think everything's going to get bigger and better, and it actually doesn't. It's actually harder to find. It gets diluted, and, there are some good and some bad. And so that made me realize, when you have students, that you need to give them the best of yourself and the best chance to be, the best version of themselves.
Yes.
So ultimately that was something that meant a lot to me, because I'd sort of seen what a good instructor and an average or mediocre instructor could do to a group of students. And unfortunately, people, like I said, aren't educated when they first start, so they think everybody is the same and they think their instructor is great. But quite often that instructor might be quite average, and those guys then don't really get the best training and ultimately can't become the best version of themselves. So I studied really hard, through that age, through that beginning section of my life, where I just strive to be everything that my instructor wanted it to be, which was always the best version of ourselves. So, I threw myself into those things. And then, when you were coming around and training with us, there was kind of the infancy of my teaching. I was, I'd been teaching for a few years, but I had a group of guys that wanted to train with me, and I felt, that if you don't give the best of yourself to them, then, you can't. The only thing I really have control of is my performance, how hard I train. And then if guys see that I'm going to, put out as much as I can, well, then they'll start that work ethic and that culture.
Yes.
And for me, it was, I had a vision of the culture I wanted. I had multiple instrucors that I'd trained under by that stage. And I thought, I wanted to take, what I thought was the best parts of those instructors, and then try and create a culture around, what they'd offered me. And that's the thing. If you have a dojo that has a culture of hard work and, and then also intelligent, an intelligent way of looking at what you're doing, so that you're not just a robot or an uninformed physical being. You need to be informed about what you're doing. And I think we don't look at the why enough, and people just verbatim, I was taught this, so I'll teach it to you.
Yeah.
But why are we doing it? What's it for? How does it improve me? How does it affect my opponent? How can it affect the fight? Or the situation that I'm in. And I think without that, people get a bit lost.
Yes. Well, mate, you're a phenomenal martial artist, and a fantastic instructor. And I just reflect on all the times, I've been training with you. And, I always say, mate, you left an impression on me to always strive for that 1% better. And I think this is the key to life, mate. I think it's achieving not just your physical self, mentality as well. And you really do, mate. You set the standard, but you actually give a fuck about your students. And this is what I think is lacking in martial arts today, mate. And is your whole sort of mindset and your view of karate, and being able to overcome obstacles and build resiliency. How has karate influenced you in overcoming setbacks?
Yeah, and that's the thing, isn't it? I mean, I talk about this a lot in our class, even where, combat in today's society is actually pretty rare. You don't have a lot of combat in a day-to-day life, unless if you're a fighter, then that's what you do. But in day-to-day life, self-defense situations are rare, thank God. And that's, so the physicality of what we do is great, but ultimately, it has to come through in your life, because conflict, is every day. Some form of conflict, some form of argument, or, just a disagreement between two people, that's every day. That's just what life is.
Yeah.
And so, the karate or the martial arts or the fighting, practice that you're doing has to lend itself to your life. And everything's a battle. Sometimes getting out of bed's a battle because you've had some tough times, or you're not well, or whatever. It's like life presents obstacles that we have to battle over. And so for me, it's, the adversity that I've had to overcome in a controlled situation, like within the dojo, has then allowed me to, have the confidence, or, just the tool to go, well, now life's thrown this at me. Well, I know I can just, take bite-sized pieces of this one thing at a time and get through it, or I've just got to, suck up this whole thing in one go, or whatever it's required. You've got the tools to then, push forward and know that there's a light at the end of the tunnel, even when it feels like, like it's dark. You'll turn a corner and then you'll see the light.
Yeah.
And just having that faith is something that can get you out of, multiple situations in your life. And I think, that ability to face adversity, is something that people need. If we don't have that, then when it really, because we'll always face adversity. It's just life. And if it shocks us, if it's like, oh, this is happening to me and I don't know really, I don't have any tools, I don't know how to deal with this, then that's when people get inward and start to suffer and lose parts of themselves. So I never really wanted that. And so again, you were talking about the responsibility that I feel I have for my students is exactly that. I felt that I needed to give those guys an adversity every time they came to training. It was just it's a controlled environment, but it's providing an adversity for you to get over. It's going to be hard. You're going to work hard. It's going to be honest. And when it's done, everyone feels amazing.
Yeah.
Because we as humans love overcoming adversity. We love to challenge ourselves.
There's a quote, Shihan. I don't know if it exactly goes like this, but it's hard things, easy life, hard things.
Yeah.
And I reflect on the time that I was training with you, and I call it voluntary adversity, mate.
Yeah.
Getting in there, voluntary adversity, it's getting in there, mate, and it's doing the things that are hard and difficult because it gives you the tool set to be able to handle obstacles in life. And I remember the black gi grading I did, and it was fucking hard, mate.
Yeah.
30 rounds of non-stop sparring, fresh opponents, had to smash through some tiles, and it's breaking through barriers and obstacles. And I just reflect on that, and I just remember when I did my ACL, I snapped it, and I'm thinking, oh, fuck. I had to keep going, had to keep persevering. As fucking hard as it was, I just remember the support that yourself and all the other black belts gave me to persevere and push through that grading. And I think this is a testament to your teaching, and I watch this in your students. You know, your students are a reflection of you, and that's what really impressed me about you, mate. But with everything that you're doing, mate, with karate, because you're teaching seminars, you're also teaching classes as well. What is the long-term goal? Like, what are you looking to do long-term with this? Are you looking to, with Goju and expansion? Like, what's the long-term goal?
I mean, it's just so embedded in your life when you've been doing it, as long as we have and as long as I have. I don't remember, time without karate, time without a martial art in my life. So it's sort of embedded itself now into me, into who I am. So ultimately, expand the dojo, like it's about trying to get, to expose yourself to as many people as possible, because I think there's something to offer here. Martial arts has always had a great amount to offer the society, if you like. And so, yeah, I would like to expand to as many people as you can, but how that is done, people are certainly a lot better at business than I am.
Yes.
And that's unfortunately sometimes the reason why someone gets more contact time with people is because they're good at the marketing and that side of it. Whereas that certainly hasn't been my strong suit. My strong suit's been, doing the thing that we do, doing the martial art and breaking it down into, I think, palatable pieces for people to digest and understand so that they get an education out of it. I mean, that's what martial arts is. It's an education. It's not, there's nothing, brutal about it, or it's not blunt force. That's not martial arts. Martial arts is, incredibly intelligent, incredibly broken down and technical. It doesn't matter which one it is. They're all the same. They're all built on, a technical system and a scaffolding that, we adhere to this group of techniques, and we understand these techniques. And so I love the fact that that's what it is. It's an education, and I love educating people on that. So for me, expansion wise, I want to, I've always wanted to sort of get my dojo to run bigger and better, and you hope for that. But I've been blessed with, through my connections with the people in Japan. They have seminars over there, and that's an amazing situation where you have, a couple of hundred people from all around the world come to a seminar. Well, then you meet them. You get along with a lot of them, and some of them become really close to you. And so now I've had the ability to go and travel and see them, because, everyone comes from all over the world to this one place, and then they all scatter home again. And now I've been able to, and I've taught in Canada and Italy and, Slovakia and places like this. And so through those channels, it's a great way to, we run seminars and stuff like that. And those seminars and meeting those people and seeing that different culture and the way they train, I mean, that's a two-way street to me. That's as much an education for me as it is me trying to, sort of educate them. I mean, they're all really strong martial artists in their own right, but of course, everyone thinks of things slightly different, and that's probably something that I've tried to adhere to, is always having a point of difference. Always being, even within karate, which karate's got multiple roads within it, in multiple systems, and then even within the same system of martial arts or same system of karate, people tend to want to, do it in a certain way. So if you're about competition and doing karate fighting, stuff like the Olympics, well, that's fine, but it's not what I'm into. I'm, I look at karate as a way of being self-sufficient and being, able to protect yourself, or, and we've spoken about this lots of times. We talk about our space, and the ability to occupy a space, and ultimately then the ability to control a space.
Yes.
Which is what I think martial arts ultimately its goal is about, is for you to be given tools to then better understand and control your space. And then what your space is will change in life. Because when you're a young man, when we first met, we were young men and we really cared about our space, and and it was a little bit more about, because we're young men and we're flawed, it's a bit more about occupying that space. Whereas as you go through martial arts and you learn more and more about it, it's more about the control of space, and half the time, or more than half the time, you're going to relent that space to have that control.
Yes.
And I often, speak about the matador, the bullfighter. He doesn't occupy space. He relents it. He relents it over and over and over, but he's in control.
Yes.
So he's the controlling guy. And so, that's, the way I look at it is, you're trying to create an ability to better, engage with your environment but have control of that. So you're not out, when people are out of control, they do stuff and that leads to regret. And so if we can constantly be a little bit more in control of our space or whatever, and like I say, that space changes in your life, go from a young man, being in control of yourself to, having a lady, to a family, and, ladies, for themselves, they control their own space, but then they'll have a family, they'll have their children, and, so your space increases. And I think from a martial arts instructor point of view, we're in this unique situation where we have a real community of people.
Yeah, we do.
And
yeah,
and as an instructor, you're an instructor yourself. You understand. I've seen, and I know you nurture those people, so they become part of your space. That's part of your world, and you become very protective of that.
Yes,
like we are as men and as like I say, martial arts instructors, we're very protective of our community. And so when you have 100 people in your dojo or whatever, like you feel like they're all yours. You feel like they're all your responsibility. And I think that gives you, the requirement to give them the best of yourself. That all leads back to that. That's one of the things we do.
It's fascinating, mate, because I think it creates a positive ripple effect. Because I've trained under you, I've learned some skills and tools to be able to teach my students. And I think it's this positive ripple effect. And I think it just manifests into so much, so much good.
So much positive.
Yeah. It's amazing, mate. So what is the difference between some of the karate styles? Because you're specifically Goju. So you have Goju, you've got Shotokan karate, Zendokai karate, but specifically, are they all the same or similar? But what is specifically different about Goju?
So, ultimately, karate, came, there'd be a lot of people who would have their version of how things went down, but simplistically, I think the way, without going too deep into the super detail of it all, karate came from, ultimately Okinawa. They had the Okinawa Tei. Tei is hand, of course, that was called the Okinawan hand. But within Okinawa, there was 3 versions. And then Funakoshi decided, we should have this one thing, we all should be together, united. And as he did that, the Shurate, and I can never remember the third one, but he said we should be together. But then when he went and looked at it, Nahate, Naha is just where it's from, Nahate was different. It was kind of like it had its own system and it had its own answers for what it did. And the other two actually worked really well together and could learn and benefit from each other. So together they were a really nice thing. And that ultimately became Shotokan. And Funakoshi was Shoto and the House of Shoto, Shotokan. And then Nahate ultimately became Goju. And now, there's a lot of history about that, but they're one of the most founding karates. And then, there's a whole lot of other forms. They sort of form the 2, I suppose, pillars, I think, of what karate really is. There's, Kyokushin, which is, of course, an amazing martial art, really great form of karate. but Masayama was part of the Yamaguchi dojo at one stage. He was a part of Goju himself.
Yes.
And so he has then, quite brilliantly, but he altered it and changed it to what he wanted, his vision. And so that's what, Kyokushin basically is that man's vision and what he thought was, it should be, what karate should be. And that's, but that ultimately came from his experiences, and a lot of that was Goju. So you would call Goju the core of that. And then Shotokan, it's very different because I'm a Goju guy. Shotokan is a little bit more linear, a little bit more long range. They tend to be a little bit more conditioned. Hard on hard is sort of something that they would look at. Their blocks are a bit harder, whereas the Goju is a little bit more circular. There's more deflection within Goju, a lot more parry, you would call it, and that allows the smaller person and a lady, it's a little bit more, those options are a little bit more, advantageous, I think, for someone like that. Goju is very close in fighting. Usually, it's cramped quarters and things like that, or a crowded area, that sort of stuff, which is, I think, indicative of most self-defense situations. Not all, but of course, but some. And then a lot over the years, of course, has evolved away from the tradition of it anyway, where if you look at modern Goju dojos, a lot of them are going towards the tournament side of things, which has nothing to do with self-defense. It's a game. It's like, comparing touch football to rugby union. I mean, they're similar. Yeah. And there's a few crossover ball skills and so on. But, if you had the Australian touch football team and they played the Wallabies, well, that touch in a game of touch, they would destroy the Wallabies in a game of touch. But then if you played the same group of people against in a union game, they would get injured probably because they're not conditioned to that.
Yes.
So there's, martial arts has done that. Karate's done that. Karate's got that direction that it's headed in, where it's gone towards this competitive, touch tournament ultimately, and that's great, I think, for kids, and a business side of it, because you can get a lot of kids, you get a lot of members, and but that does detract from the core and the roots of martial arts as being a self-defense. Karate is the empty hand, but it's the empty hand way of defending oneself, like it was when you didn't have a weapon and so on, so I think in some regards that it's lost its way, in my opinion.
I agree.
I think, the karate has got a name now the this thing, the Olympics is probably one of the worst things that could happen.
I was about to bring this up, actually. Yeah. Did you see the...
We all saw it, didn't we?
What was your reaction to that?
Devastation.
Yes.
Not devastation like it surprised me it was going to happen, to tell you the truth. It was what I expected. Not obviously that exact situation where, but it's just that, isn't it? Everyone's going to say that. The guy that got knocked out, he won the thing. And that's, so you get knocked out and you win. I mean, that in itself, it should ring alarm bells for everybody. And, any other fighting or combat martial art. But I think the thing that you need to realize is that form of competition that karate people go and do is not a form of combat.
No.
It's a game.
Point sparring.
Point sparring is a game that they play, that if you had some combat experience, you could utilize some of those skills to go and play. Like I say, it's like if you play touch football, you can use some of those skills to go and play rugby, and if you played rugby, you could use some of those skills to go and play touch football. But ultimately, it's a specific skill set now. Like if you and I went in a touch tournament, mate, I mean, I rate you as a great fighter. You're a solid guy.
Thank you.
I've seen you over the years grow, but mate, if you went in a touch tournament, we'd get our ass handed to us. Like it's gonna be 3-0 every game, but that's what happens if you play rugby and you go and play soccer. You got to get hammered.
Yeah.
It's a different skill set. It's specific to that task, and so it really is a game. And like I said, it's a great game for kids, and you can there have been some people who have adapted certain ways of doing karate into full contact. There's some of the UFC guys have they've got karate backgrounds.
Yeah.
GSP is a Kyokushin guy, which is an easier thing to evolve into an MMA environment because they're full contact to start with. You just start punching people in the head a bit harder and away you go. Whereas there's a lot of other karates now, I think, how would you go if you have to then start putting that into a full contact arena? It's a bigger, you can evolve it, but it's a bigger evolution. It's somewhere you've got to spend, a lot of time evolving that skill set. So yeah, the Olympics, it didn't surprise me because I knew that's what it was going to be. And the problem is you have all these people now looking at it going, oh, this is going to be karate. It's going to be when I'm going to see some, in their mind, I'm sure some people thought it was going to be like a boxing or an MMA event almost, like in the Olympics. And then they got to see that and they went, oh, what is this? And so the name karate has been injured by that.
I know.
It really has. It's karate, and you see videos on stuff, like on different media outlets, you'll see different cuts of, and the old school karate, and it's just karate really, but because they're hitting each other and they're doing, knocking people out, and, there's some really great, hard, competitive situations within a karate. It's an old school karate, and it's kind of like, well, it doesn't have to be. I mean, people are still looking within the combat arts for adversity. They're still looking to test themselves, and kickboxers are punching and kicking each other every day. Boxers are still getting in the ring, and everyone's taking care of everyone, but people are getting banged. Stuff's going on. That's still happening in gyms and dojos and kickboxing gyms all over Australia and the world. So for some reason, karate as a whole, not as a whole, but as a big portion, has taken this thing that it's got to be softer and less, and it's like, well, it doesn't, because karate is actually getting a smaller. It's getting smaller ultimately. Yeah. It's getting bigger in kids, but it gets very small in other combat areas because it's diluted itself with it's just this thing that you saw in the Olympics. That's not karate at all. That's a direction that some karate dojos have gone to.
Yeah.
And, if you're still interested in a martial art that can be utilized to, defend yourself, whether you're a male or a female or a big guy or a little guy or whatever, then karate can be that answer still. Every martial art has got its strengths and its weaknesses. It's just a fact of life, and every person will have their strengths and their weaknesses.
Yeah.
We're all individuals. But, if you adhere to a good system of karate and you have a good instructor, someone who understands how to extrapolate the techniques that they've presented into something that's usable and that can create effect. Ultimately, that's what you have to do. You have to create effect. And that's, I think, the problem with the current direction, isn't it? Is like the one thing you're not allowed to do within that competition is create effect.
Yeah.
Because you have to move across the space, hit someone, and not have an effect. So there's no contact. And that's the problem, where everything we want to do in a martial art is create an effect. That's what you must do. You have to have an effect. And so that's, for me, is that it's two very different directions that karate's headed in. And unfortunately, the one that's becoming popularly known, that people are educated on seeing is the direction that is no longer efficient to protect yourself with.
Yeah.
And
everyone is entitled to their opinions. Everyone's entitled to their opinion in the sense that, okay, this is what I do, this is what works, this is what doesn't work. But mate, there was a viral video of you that sparked a lot of controversy. This video, mate, is a video of you demonstrating Sanshin Kata.
Mm-hmm.
And I knew exactly what you were doing, mate. I knew exactly what the video was about. And this is the fucking problem with the internet, mate, is people are too quick to sort of jump in and say, what's this? And you had a lot of criticism from people that didn't know what the fuck was going on, but then you had a large majority of other people that knew exactly what was going on. And as I said, mate, the internet, you're gonna have trolls and that sort of stuff, mate. But I knew exactly what was going on. It was for a grading, and Sanshin Kata is a very well popular kata, especially in Goju. But it demonstrates the power, the mindset, the grounding, be able to harness your energy into the stance and not let any sort of outside obstacles.
Being in that moment.
In that moment, it's a mindfulness kata.
Yes.
And these internet trolls really pissed me off. Really pissed me off about that kata. But what was your initial reaction to the attention of that video garnering?
Initially, I was surprised. I mean, that whole situation happened to me a little bit in the way that, we were at a seminar, the Japanese were over, they, like, to them, I'm big. I'm not a big guy, but to them, I am. And they like, they pick someone who's got a bit of strength about them and, and then they want to do a demonstration. And that actually was just a demonstration. Yeah. Basically, a minute ago, I was sitting on the ground, listening to them, because it's basically just a kata seminar. So, I was just there to partake in that. And then they get me up, Jamie. So I have to get up and I have to go over and do Sanshin. So, you take your top off because that's part of they can see that you're breathing correctly. Your chest isn't rising. You're not breathing into our chest, breathe into our abdomen and so on and so on. So there's all of these factors to it. That's why the shirt's off. That's what that. And then they do this thing called shime, which is shime means tension. So the shime is the testing of that tension. And so usually it's done in a way where, they'll hit your shoulders and they'll hit your lats and they'll kick you between your legs, which I just thought it was hilarious. Everyone's thinking I'm this Iron Man.
Yeah.
That's a check of the stance. Stance is narrow enough within your inner thigh and tense. So the inner thigh is tense. So it's obviously when you tense a muscle, it gets a little bit bigger and that creates a jam. So whenever he kicks me, it just hits my inner thigh. It doesn't hit my groin.
No.
Like I'm not some in that case who, I'm just like any other man. I would just fall. But so it ultimately just doesn't make its mark. It's you're protected by the stance, not by some weird constitution. But so anyway, that situation sort of came about where it was just like I was volunteered. I didn't volunteer. They got me up to do it, and so I did the kata, and then it was extreme. It's like we don't normally do shime to that level where he hit me, usually in between the techniques that you're doing, they'll hit you, one time or maybe a couple of times and then once, so you get a couple on the shoulders and once on your lap, to check that's there. And it's for you because you feel, someone grabs you, you'll feel if you're tense, you'll know that, and if the object of the game is to be tense, and when someone grabs you, you feel you were or you weren't. The same thing when they slapping you, you feel that's tense. And so if you're not where you should be, it'll remind you. And of course, that's what it does. And it checks you. It's all very about posture as well, because, posture is a framework that we move on. So if you haven't got a good posture, you're not going to move efficiently. So anyway, so it was all happening and it was extreme. He was hitting me like 4 times, 5 times in between techniques, whereas usually it's once, maybe twice. And he hit me for the whole kata. The kata that you see on that thing, it was a minute long. So because the platform gives you a minute and you throw it up.
Yeah.
You know, like,
Yeah.
so we did a minute. It was 2 minutes long. And so that was, that was the second set, you know, like that was the second part of the kata. Like the first part of it was, you know, the first minute was him hitting me everything as well. But of course, the second set of it is more extreme because I'm getting redder and redder. And so, we just posted it, you know, and, you know, we get a couple thousand hits on our thing every now and then. And it was just ballistic. It went, you know, I think ultimately that video is like 19 million.
Something like that.
Views.
It's grown.
And that's just one platform. There were other platforms that it went on as well. Someone else shared it to someone else and then it got like 5 million views on TikTok or something. So it went
viral,
like properly viral. But, you know, it wasn't me setting myself up to do that in front of everyone. And I would never do that to my own student. I would never do that level of that level of testing to someone. Like, you know, like you say, that it's usually a grading format, or a seminar leading up to a grading, which, you know, still is the grading, isn't it? You know, like you're doing a seminar before a grading, and that's all part of it. Where as the instructors, you're always looking at everybody through the whole weekend. And so you would do that testing, but not to that extreme, just not to that level. You know, like I say, maybe once, twice, you do the strikes on people, but to do it every way. But for me, it was just a test. And it's, you know, you've got a brand of who you are and what you do. And, you know, so I had to just tolerate it at the end of the day. And for me, I just turned it in. I was just like, oh, this is cool. Like, this is hard. And you can imagine how distracting that is. To tell you the truth, the cut was terrible.
Yeah.
You know, like like I said, it's not a thing that I've just prepped myself for. It's like, I mean, of course we always practice it, but it's just hey, come up here. Oh, okay, let's go do this thing. It's like right here, right now. And so the cut is actually pretty bad. But, I mean, I was just not prepared, you know, for it to be. And in the way that the part of the thing was, I'm waiting going, are you finished? Do you know what I mean? Like there's this, okay, I can go now. And so the kind of got really segmented into this. I had to wait. Okay, cool. Now I'm going to go again. And then quite often they just go in between the punches. But he was hitting me in between the other techniques as well. So I was like, are we going to go again? And, you know, like it was, it was really hard to be centered in that thing. So, but the reaction to it is always going to be good and bad. And the way I looked at it was like I said, you know, that video got about 19 million views.
Yeah.
The majority of people there was over 10,000 comments. And so of the 19 million views, let's say, you know, that's not 19 million people. That's, you know, let's say that's a third of that. You know, so that's like 6 or 7 million people viewed it. Just to be, you know, conservative. But so 6 or 7 million people, you've now got 10,000 comments. Well, that's pretty minuscule, really. And then when you look at those comments, a lot of the, you know, the trolls, mate, it's driven by a lack of understanding,
exactly,
and their own insecurity. I think, you know, like, because at the end of the day, like, could you have done it? You know, like, I mean, you could have, but
there's projection.
Yeah,
exactly what they were doing.
Yeah.
No fucking clue whatsoever.
No, they didn't have an idea. Which was, and that's like there are things that people do that I don't understand why they're doing them, but I'm not going to come and grade on you for it. I'm simply just going to say, well, I don't understand that. And there were a lot of people that sort of went, what is this about? And I thought that was genuine. And some people took the piss, and I love that. We commented and laughed with them, and you know, like, I'm happy for everybody to, you know, have a laugh. Like, no problem if you're going to put yourself, you know, like, we posted it. So, you know, you've got to be prepared for that. And so I was happy to have a laugh with people, and some of the restitches that they did was fantastic. So but the reality of it is, you know, it is actually a fairly hard part of it, of our system and what we do. And, it's a very difficult thing to achieve, really, when someone, and for me, it was like a nice test, because I don't think there's too, I mean, you've been around Goju for years, and, have you ever seen a shimmy demonstration like that? Like, it was,
Yeah.
I
remember doing Sanshin Kata, and I just remember that it's a mindfulness kata. And I just remember how difficult it actually was to be able to be in control of your own body.
Mm.
And I mean, why do you think people meditate? They meditate so they don't have to think.
Yeah, they bring themselves to the moment.
Into the moment. Yeah. And that's what the kata demonstrated. And I reckon, mate, there probably only would have been maybe 30% of the trolls that were commenting on it.
Mm.
I reckon you had more positive than negative. And you had a lot of people. I read the comments, and then there was this one guy. He's a TikToker, and he puts up a lot of bullshito, videos.
Yeah.
And then you see all the comments, mate. And trained martial artists, they said, "You're wrong here. This isn't bullshito. This is legit. This is actually Goju Karate." So you had a lot of comments, a lot of positive comments, and I knew very well that Sanshin Kata was a kata for your breathing, mindfulness, and it's a very intricate kata because you have to be grounded, and there's a lot of things you have to focus on. But it's the problem with the internet, Shihan, is you're going to get those fuckheads that
you always are. You are always going to, and that's just part of you've got to accept that. You've got to accept that you put yourself out on a medium, and you just think of any kind of, I mean, not that, that was a 2-second moment of fame, but any kind of fame, you think about, movie stars and rock stars and stuff like that. They're always getting, other sportsmen that have, big profiles on, in society. Those guys are always getting hammered, because that's what people are, like you say, that people project and feel like bringing someone down brings them up. But none of that really bothered me. I was just, ultimately, when I got to see it, it put it in perspective for me, because to me, it was just something that happened to me at a training session. So it was just another day at the office. I really, I was like, oh yeah, cool. We'll put this on. Like, I was lucky enough that the Japanese chose me, I suppose, and I knew it was a little bit extreme, but we'll whack this out there. And then when I saw just massive reaction, it's like, oh, okay, so this isn't normal, right? Like, if it was just normal, we would have got 100 views, not nearly 20 million.
Yep.
So that's when you realize, okay, well, that's not, you are doing something that's, considered to be, some sort of extreme, that's sort of out there a little bit more, and being able to just tolerate that in that moment for me that was a test.
Yeah.
It was a test for me, and one that I think I passed.
Yes.
Because.
And your system, Shihan, is legit. Your way of thinking and the way you project that onto your students, it's legit. And I think there's a bit of fuckery going on right now in martial arts. And, they're watering down systems. We were just talking about this before. But what do you think as far as the way karate is going? What do you feel like is lacking?
Yeah, I think adversity is probably the easiest thing to say. It's like, anything that we achieve, an achievement by its definition is you've got to have overcome something.
Yep.
You've got to have been tested. And like, as martial artists, we throw words around like grading and stuff like that, which is just a test, isn't it? Shinsa test. So those tests are supposed to be that. A test, by definition, is something that you could fail. And I look at systems and I look at martial arts that's going on, and the fuckery that you speak of. Yeah. To use your words, mate, I like it. What's going on is, and you brought this up before as well. It's become the the participation award.
Exactly.
And I'm just not a part of that. I'm not like I teach kids at a, obviously we have a class specifically for kids and we have a class for adults. And so, kids, it's almost a different martial art, like obviously the techniques are similar and stuff like that, but you've got to, we have junior ranks for a reason. They're not the same. And so you treat kids a little bit, more like kids, I suppose, but still are capable. They are so capable. So regardless if it's a kid or an adult, you have to create a platform upon which what they're being asked to do is challenging.
Back.
It's got an adversity to it. It's got something that being, like I say, whether it's man, woman, or child, has to overcome. It's something that they probably would have thought at one stage, I'm never going to be able to do that. And then it's like baby steps, and you can overcome it. You can get there.
Yeah.
Yeah. So we teach children, we teach adults, but the common, and like I say, they're very, very different, approaches to those two classes. But the common thread that runs through there is the adversity. You've got to create challenge. You've got to create something that they can overcome. And, like I said, when we talk about gradings and, we're just testing them, there's got to be a possibility that people fail. And that sounds like obvious. So, yeah, of course. Like when you go to school, you can fail the tests. You can get it, and it's a grading. It's, you can get an A, a B, a C, a D, an F, So, martial arts is no different. It has to be, there's a bar and you need to get over that bar and then, you pass. That's it. Now, the way a karate or most martial arts gradings are done or performed is, you're invited. You don't nominate yourself to go to your grading. You're invited to go by your instructor. Says, hey, James, you're ready. You should get ready for this grading, and you lead up to it, and then you get it done. And obviously, when you're doing the beginning part of your career, those gradings happen a lot more often because, you have 10 gradings in 5 years, or in jiu-jitsu, they do, 10 gradings in 10 years. But after that, it gets really sparse and takes longer to prepare. But in the beginning, you're doing lots of them. I mean, the kids are doing lots of gradings. They'll do a couple a year, 2 a year, 3 a year sometimes. And, you invite that child, you invite that student to come and be a part of the grading. And you've invited them because you think they're ready. So therefore, the likeliness of them failing is less. Yeah. I get that. It's because you haven't just gone, who wants to go? If you just did that, and you just said, well, who wants to go? Well, then you would have to have a lot of people fail. But you do invite them. So I understand you're going to have a small, but then, people still get things wrong. People still, succumb to, their own fitness, their own, their mind wanders, whatever, they have a brain explosion, whatever, something happens and they fail. It's just what happens. The pressure gets to you. Now, if it is pressure, or it is the fact that you didn't work hard enough and the instructors missed the fact that you weren't quite prepared. Thought you were, but then you weren't because you'd missed some of the work or whatever. Because there's, people miss things. They're big classes sometimes. So if that's the case, well, then failing's going to be a great learning experience for you. Whereas people see it as this issue and, the word fail is like a swear word. It's like, no, because, and you've been a gym instructor in your career as well for a long time. And it's like, we, as people working with weights, you go to failure. That's exactly the thing. It's right. Like you manage that failure, like how often you're going to go to failure. You're going to do forced reps. You're going to do, eccentric forced reps or whatever you're going to do. You're going to change the way you're going to pyramid down so that, your failure.
Yes.
Like that's what you're doing. You're managing failure all the time because failure is good because it creates change. Failure creates the most change. And that's what martial arts is there to do, is create change. If you don't offer any resistance If you don't offer any kind of adversity or resistance or challenge, then you'll create no change.
Yes.
And if you haven't changed, you haven't learned, you haven't evolved. And that's what we have to do. We have to evolve. And I think that's what's missing. The reason why, someone like yourself gets a little bit, sort of looks out there and sees what's going on, because, you're across a lot of different dojos, a lot of different martial arts, and you see that dilution, you see that thing being watered down. And I think the reason why you're seeing that is because people, this society's got this idea that people can't fail anymore.
Yeah.
You can't, like, that will be an insult. Well, no, because, I'm trying to teach you. And to tell you the truth, the fastest way to learn is to fail.
Yes.
Now, I appreciate that's what we do in the practice side of things. We try and concentrate all of those little mini failures into that thing, because that's, from a self-defense point of view, that's the safest way to do it, isn't it?
Exactly right.
You want to fail, you want to feel the pressure of, like, especially, I look at self-defense with a lady, some of that, like, ladies live in a place, like, people don't touch women, you know what I mean? Like, they live in an environment that we honor their space, you know what I mean? Like, men don't really touch women unless they're, yours, so to speak, your daughter, your wife, your really close friends, like, they're within your community. You might hug them or whatever, but you don't touch women. Like, dudes will, hey mate, whack each other on the back or whatever. Like, we're hard with each other. We'll go over that touch barrier often with each other. It's not a stress for us, but women don't get touched. So then all of a sudden, if, like in a self-defense situation, you're in a dojo or whatever, you grab this woman, and you can see the panic, like, just you grabbing their wrists, you haven't injured them, you haven't hurt them, you just grab their wrists, and you can see, like, they're dealing with that. I can grab your wrist, I mean, you're a martial artist, but a normal guy, you grab their wrist, like, it's no big deal.
Yes.
But for a lady, it really is, and it's daunting. And so, you've got to desensitize that. You've got to get them to overcome and change their opinion of that, because otherwise the panic is too hard to deal with, while they're doing it. So if you can't create, an uncomfortable, out of their comfort zone situation, then the growth will be, the fastest growth is outside your comfort zone. And we always talk about it, again, like what you're saying about you manage failure in the gym or whatever. It's the same thing with comfort zone in a dojo. It's like, you want to drag someone out of their comfort zone. You don't want to drag them out to the sea so far they can't see land. They need to be able to see their comfort zone. And then, you know what I mean? Like, that's a part of it. It's like, I've taken you out of your comfort zone, but it's just there.
Yes.
It's only just there. And then, of course, as everything changes, it's exponential, the growth. Because as they get used to being out of their comfort zone, they also then get used to being further away from their comfort zone. You know what I mean? So that's why the growth of a martial arts student is exponential, because you get conditioned and you get desensitized to things, and you can push yourself harder and further, faster, as you go along. And then that's what it's about. But if you take that part away, how do you grow?
Yes.
And that's what I see.
You made some good points there too, Shihan. And success leaves clues. So whenever I look at someone that's successful, if you look at the most famous people on the planet, they've failed, they've bombed.
Yeah.
This is how we evolve. This is how we improve. And this is the problem that I'm seeing in martial arts. The fuckery that we're seeing now is you're getting McDojo, watered down systems. It's a disservice to your students, because and this is the problem I have with participation trophies in school, is it's not teaching children how to overcome setbacks, how to overcome failure, because some of the greatest lessons you'll ever learn is through failure. And I think, mate, that this needs to be implemented a lot more in school curriculums, but also specifically in martial arts, mate, because you're a fantastic instructor, but you set the standard, mate. You set the standard for your students, and this is what I think needs to happen. But
yeah, I think you need to lead by example to some degree, because and I think one of the things that you'd know about me is that I never ask my students to do anything that I haven't already done or wouldn't do myself. And once you have that trust within your student that they've seen you do it, they've seen you undergo the adversity, so to speak. They've seen you sweating and suffering, and our end of year bash, as we always talk about, that is some fuckery, by the way. But that's 30 rounds outside in the park, that's some craziness.
Yeah.
But I'm there every year, and I'm sort of not built for the sun, but I get out there, and that's another one that attracts people. What's going on? It's like, man, it's Brisbane, it's December, it's 30 degrees.
Yeah.
We're outside.
Yeah.
But it's a great fun event, and we have a great time doing it. It's not super competitive for that reason. There's 30 rounds. If it was 10 rounds, you'd be right. We're on.
We're going hard
10 rounds, and you sort of. We're at 30 rounds, so it allows you to sort of. It's a long day. Calm down. And it's more of a conversational, social event.
Yes,
if that's what you can do as a martial artist. You can enjoy just sparring with someone. It becomes a conversation. I give you something, you give me something, and then there's that's the to and fro, the give and take. And that's a beautiful thing. But if you remove that adversity, if you remove the challenge out of things, it just loses all meaning. It really does. It just and I think society today is heading that way, where all of a sudden it's like, oh, you're not allowed to challenge someone, and you see some of this woke society that's going on now without getting into that. It's a real crazy thing.
It's insane.
The way, people talk about being, insulted. It's like, well, some things aren't you, and it's like, are you insulted or, offended, I should say? Are you offended or you just don't? It just doesn't go with what you believe. That's okay. Like, we don't all have to travel down the same road. There's multiple roads and multiple ways of getting to different places, and so you do you a little bit more. You can't expect to go through life and not have something offend you. Like, it's kind of an arrogant way, like the whole world has to adhere to what I think is acceptable.
What do you think of all these gender ideologies? And I mean, we're talking about martial arts and the fuckery that's going on in martial arts. But see, I think martial arts is the last line of defense. And what I mean by that is some of the kindest, some of the most gentle, some of the most benevolent and friendly people I've ever met in my life are trained killers. Yeah. They have the capacity for violence, but they don't inflict violence. And I put up a video, Shihan, on the role of masculinity and what it means to be a man. And, this whole thing with toxic masculinity, and it's ridiculous. There's no such thing as toxic masculinity. We wouldn't have all the bullshit and the fuckery if more people trained in martial arts, because we understand what violence is. It's that old Japanese proverb. It's better to be a warrior in a garden than a gardener in a war. The kids that shoot up the schools in America, they didn't have a brotherhood. They didn't have a proper mentor. They didn't have guidance.
Yeah.
And, we're starting to see this in woke culture where I don't even know how many letters there are in the LGBT thing.
Yeah.
But what do you think is going on in the world right now, and how can we sort of fix this?
What a question.
Yeah, it's a big question, mate.
Again, and it's where I come from. It's my personal opinion. I don't agree with, certain things that people are saying and doing, and that's okay, because, I'm sure there's plenty of things that I'm saying that people wouldn't agree with as well. And the world is like that. We can all, agree to disagree. That's fine. But you cannot create a place that has to be, completely soft and completely we are, as beings, we are a primal, in an animal at our core, that we've evolved a society that we run our intelligence has allowed us to run this level of society and so on, and we've evolved to here. Now, as a physical being, we still have needs and, mental requirements for ourselves, or we kind of go off the rails a little bit. And I think, from I'm a man, I don't understand everything, what it would like to be a woman, but I know a lot of them. But the thing is as a man, we have a requirement and we need a platform to prove ourselves to some degree, not to the world, but ultimately to ourselves. Like the comment you made, like these people who are, lovely and grounded and super, obliging human beings, but trained killers. And a lot, what's behind that is that they've found their outlet as a man, and they've proven themselves to themselves. It's not like I don't need to get up and prove myself to many other people. I sort of just need me to be, and as one goes on as a man, you will always come against your own questions. And I say this thing often where every boy somewhere in their life is going to have an image of what a man is. And that image is right, because it will be anything, because it's the boy's experience and his choices that made this image come to him. Now, he might think a man is someone that plays an instrument or earns a lot of money or is a good fighter or, is handy around the house, or it's whatever that boy decides it is. I'm certainly not going to hear and say to someone, this is what a man is. I have my version of it, and it's just as correct as the next young lad who comes through. What's important to that kid is he'll have this vision of what a man is. It's his vision, so it's right. Now, he then wants to achieve that, and he'll always ask himself, has he achieved that? Am I that thing? Am I that man? Like, this is what a man is, sometimes it's your dad or your uncle or a mentor in your life, or, they'll all influence it. So somewhere along the line, that boy's going to go, yeah, but am I that man?
Yeah.
And that creates a lot of insecurities in young men. We've all come through that. We've all been the young, insecure young man. Like, that's nature. That's life. Like, we want to prove ourselves. But the problem is happening where they removed a lot of the forum. They've removed a lot of these platforms for young men who want to do certain things. It's gone.
Yeah.
Like, if you soften everything down, if you take away adversity, if you take away these proving grounds, like, we don't need to hunt anymore. We don't need to protect as much as we used to. We don't have to go to battle. We don't, but there's still a lot of people out there that calling, they're protectors and they're providers and they, all sorts of versions of that. So if you take away all the platforms upon which those guys can substitute those things, then you're going to have these people who are lost, and then they just start looking for, they're grasping at things. And I think that's what's happening in the world at the moment. Like, people are looking for adversity and they're looking for problems that really aren't even there. Do you know what I mean? Like, and I think part of that woke situation is that they're just looking, like, people like drama. It's like, if you don't look for the drama, life's actually nicer. But I think what we can do as martial artists, to answer your question, is, it's one of the last fronts in that, regardless of the martial arts, it provides a platform for so many men and women, boys and girls now as well, children, to, prove themselves, to follow their own, requirements for what they think is going to be the adult version of themselves, and it doesn't matter. I mean, I talk from a man's point of view because I think it's important. And I think a lot of society today through technology has taken away the meaning of masculinity.
Yeah.
Like, masculinity is a provider and a protector. That's what the masculine, being is supposed to be. That was his role in society. It's, when you look at a family unit, that's the role of that. You can still see it when you look at it as you look at a group of gorillas or whatever, like they have the silverback and he, the other gorillas provide food for him and he provides protection for them. And that's that symbiotic relationship that they have. And, and that's sort of, we can fight that family unit and say anybody can do any role as much as we want. Like women man, we know some amazing female martial artists and fighters, and like, wow, like, yeah, they can protect as well.
Yeah.
So women can protect and men can provide and men can be nurturing and women can, so the roles can swap all you want, but that'll be a personal choice. And still, when you look at the bell curve of people, the majority of family units will be, the man is the protector. The man is the guy that's, like when there's a bump in the night, who gets out of bed?
Who gets out of bed? Go down again.
That's the way it is. But, maybe when when other things are happening, like the jobs are just as important.
Yeah.
It's just that they're done by different roles.
Yeah.
And that's one of the things I think is you cannot smear that. You cannot just say everything's the same. It's not. We're different people. We're different, and we're different. We're driven different, aren't we? That's what I'm trying to say. We're driven different. We're driven in a way that what's important to us, and of course you're going to get someone who isn't that way. You're going to get a man that's not a protector, and you're going to get a woman that's not nurturing, and then you're going to get a man who is nurturing and a woman who is a protector.
That's where it all gets fucked up.
Well, it can get, but it can also just be like to me, I sort of just go, well, if that's who you are, like we got female martial artists who are amazing, and if that's their nature, and when the bump in the night comes, she wants to jump out of bed and go and see what it is. Well, great, but that is an anomaly. That is a rare.
Yep.
That's not actually the way of, the majority would work. The majority of beings, of people would, they'll have a male protector and a female nurturer and so on and so on. And those jobs, man, it's like, we all have a job that we're best at. And if we have, if you're managing people, you would get those people that are good at this. There's some good organizers and there's, some good, people who are good, handy with their hands, and there's people who are, really analytical. And you would divide them into those groups and you dish out the jobs to those groups and that's the best way to run a company or a situation.
Yes.
And the world is that, the world has jobs. It has, things that we do as people and roles that we take on, and you can fight it all you want, but ultimately, certain people, certain beings are better at certain jobs. Yes. And again, if you just come down, we are generalizing, but you can't fight against that. You can't fight against what's generally accepted.
Facts.
Because then it's the minority is being heard, and that's what's happening at the moment. You're getting this minority. That's fine. You can be your minority. You can be what you want to be within that part of the world, which is you in this minority, and I'll accept that. But you can't tell me that it's everybody. You can't tell me that it's the majority. It's the middle of the bell curve. The bell curve is, heterosexual relationships are still the majority.
Yeah.
A male and a female come together and they have a role within that relationship.
100%.
And then the majority of it is, the male's the protector and the provider, and the female's the nurturer, and today very much the provider. They provide, we all work, don't we? But they both own 50% of the requirements, and they go about their jobs, and and they'll be happy. They'll be, within themselves. That man is going to be able to go, well, I'm my version of a man. I've achieved the image of what a man is to me, and the woman should be able to do the same. And that's, I think, ultimately the most beautiful thing about men and women and relationships, is that ability to join like that. Like for me, to be able to provide a platform for my partner to be the best version of herself, and for her to be able to do the same,
Yes.
you know, drive you to things that you thought you couldn't do, to support you, we've got sayings in society, behind every good man there's a great woman. And
Yeah.
it goes both ways. Behind great things that women have done is a man supporting that and providing structure or whatever is required for that. So we have both of those things where, people don't get to pick and choose and say, there's this toxic masculinity, when the reality of that is something so different. Like, we cherish and honor women, like, men have this innate power. We're born with a physicality. It's just a natural thing. Again, the majority of beings, if you compare the male version and the female version, the male's going to be the more physical,
Yes.
have the bigger physical attribute. And so that creates a role. And I think that's a beautiful thing, when we work as a symbiotic union,
Yes.
then it's beautiful. And you don't get to run around as a minority and try and chip away at that. That's what we want to be.
Yeah. I think too, Shihan, we should celebrate both. We should celebrate masculinity and femininity.
Yeah.
And I think right now, mate, young boys especially are feeling disenfranchised. They're very confused about what it is to be a man. And you and I, mate, like I grew up in the 80s, I had my idols, Van Damme, Schwarzenegger, Seagal, Bruce Lee, and then obviously been doing martial arts since I was 6 years old. I've had some fantastic mentors as well that have guided me throughout the years. And I have parents coming to me all the time, what should I do to help my such and such, my child, get him into martial arts?
Yeah.
Because martial arts is like a gateway that opens up more doors.
Totally. Yeah. It's the level. I mean, and you've seen people grow underneath you as well. Like, I've got students that have been training with me for 20 years now, and to see that, when I met them, they were young men, some of them young boys, and women, of course, just that martial arts, and especially, 20 years ago, was predominantly a male environment. But, I've watched some of those guys, 20 years now. So when I met them, they were young men going through university. So they got themselves through university. They got it for their first job. They've succeeded. And now they're men with houses and wives and children, and they're, successful jobs, and they're managers, and, they're amazing. They're amazing people. They're super successful, yet they still do karate. They still come to me. And I look at some of those guys, even within our greater system, myself and the other dojos that we work with, we've got, doctors and accountants and lawyers, and any walk of life. It's not, people sometimes put it down to a working class man's thing, or it's certainly not that at all.
Yeah.
Like, I think anybody who wants to achieve, who has, like people who become doctors and lawyers, scientists, and high level, levels of education, people who strive to get that and have those kind of, they are up for a challenge all the time, and that's their life. That's the kind of person they are. And I think if you can constantly provide that for them, then they'll love it and they'll stay. And that's it. And that's the one thing that I think is probably a measure of my success, if I had to offer one up, would be I have a large percentage of my group that has been with me for a long time. I've got guys, students who have been with me for 20 years, guys who've been 15, 10, it's so, and then they're not simple people. They're highly educated, highly professional, driven people. So if you're not creating something to keep them there, they're like anybody. They'll just move on.
Yes.
So, I think, I have the same thing with you as, you have parents and they're looking for something for their children. And that's the thing that we provide. It is unique.
It is.
And it's a shame that it's unique ultimately, where, you know, to find adversity for that kid, a controlled level of adversity. I get that's the thing that has to be, right? Somewhere in there's got to be this kind of safety net, this little bit of padding around things.
I call it controlled violence.
Well, it can be that in places, right? Like at a top end, you know, at a level where people, especially in that black belt level, you know, you're dealing with a lot of those guys in the black belt level, then, you know, the adversity that you provide is a controlled violence.
Yeah.
There's no doubt about that. Because that, again, you know, men or women, ultimately, if you're in a bad situation in life, that's going to be uncontrolled violence. You know, like if a woman's getting attacked or a guy's getting attacked by, you know, a group of people or whatever, that's uncontrolled violence. And if you haven't had controlled violence, then, you know, like you're going to be incredibly sensitive to that, and you will suffer it. You know, like you could panic, you could, you know, you fail to perform. There's a lot of things that could happen in that moment. Whereas if you've been exposed to it, desensitized to it, you know, and given tools to deal with it, well then, you know, heaven forbid it happens, but if it does, you're in a way better place.
You know what's weird, Shihan, is, you know, you see this trend that people are doing on the internet, the ice bars, and they're doing hard things.
Mm.
As weird as it is, that shit makes me happy.
Yeah, me
Like,
too.
when I'm sparring, right, like I remember when we would do bash days, like we'd have, you know, 30 rounds of sparring. We're fucked. We probably got blood noses and, you know, we're just exhausted. But I come home after that and I feel happy.
Alive.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's so weird. It's so strange that is.
Yeah, and that's the thing. Like in a testing situation, that, you know, like you were talking about the violence is a thing. But in a testing situation, that the level is kind of put on you. This is the level that you're here to test against. But then when you're training, when people are training in a dojo, it's all manner of people. There's, you know, there's men and women, and there's, you know, big men and little men, and there's little women, and, you know, like, so everybody in there is different, unique. You know, my dojo would have, you know, we've got some 40 kilo ladies in there, and we've also got some 110 kilo guys in there. Everyone's training together, so that violence, you know, and that contact level or whatever, it comes with a volume knob.
Yeah.
Right. You know, like it's, you and I can, and have done, you know, we can wind that volume up because we want to.
Yeah.
Sometimes you want to listen to music loud, you know, like,
yeah,
that's okay. But other times you just want to take a Sunday drive and have it in the background, you know, like, so, you know, it's for the moment. It's not a ratchet, like you've done this is it. You've got to, you know, we're just going to full contact punch each other to death. It's like, it's every situation, every day, every opponent that's in front of you, it's a measurable and, you know, like I say, dispensable set of criteria, right? Like, you know, how hard do I want to hit this person? Well, it's a 40 kilo lady. So what am I going to get out of this round? Like if I'm sparring someone round and it's a 40 kilo lady, well, look at the attribute. I'm obviously longer than her. I'm obviously stronger than her. You know, like what am I going to get out of this round if I just use that attribute on it?
Yeah.
I'm just long, heavy. Like, yeah, okay, the round will go in my favor, but it's not about that. It hasn't actually gone in my favor because I haven't learned anything, you know? So it's, for me, that round would be, of course, I'm going to pull all my strength out of that because I want to have her be comfortable and, you know, pressured, but comfortable. So you pull the strength out of it. You know, do I fight a little bit closer to them because I want to, you know, I want to challenge that range rather than just keeping them at bay with my range. So, and do I, you know, then I let them, obviously they would have something like speed or maneuverability or whatever. They'll have an attribute that I won't have because I'm a bigger, you know, so you want to sort of tap into that, but that's the challenge, isn't it? You're letting them use their attribute against you in their best way because you've removed some of yours. And now this thing is fun. This thing is, you know, like it's just, that's the way to get out of it, get something out of it.
It is fun. Yeah. Like when I see people punch on in sparring, maybe a little bit of blood, some people would look at that as violent. I don't see that as violent. I see people going to war, that's violent.
Yeah.
You know, when people are getting their bodies dismembered, that's violent. But I don't see two people punching on in a controlled environment violent. And I think, as weird as it is, in a situation like that, it enables you to prepare yourself for what's to come in the real world.
Correct. That's what we talk about.
You're healthier people, mate, for doing it.
And the thing is, you know, like those two people, like you say, and the important thing you know, the important point you make is control. So, you know, there's two people banging on pretty hard where they are, you know, got a bit of blood coming out of something, and, you know, people get some itty bitty bruises or whatever. Like, that stuff is okay because there's consent.
Yes.
There's the two people that are consenting to that. You know, if one person is doing it to another, it's problematic. But that's everything that martial arts stands for, you know, is about anti-bullying, you know, and that's what bullying is, isn't it? It's when someone does something to someone else, because it's not physical. Bullying is anything. It's like, but I'm doing it to you, and you're not enjoying it. So I'm doing something at a higher level to you than you can withstand, whether I'm, you know, just with banter or, you know, social media presence or, you know, or just physical, you know, bullying someone, just beating you down. And so that's what martial arts stands against. It stands against that, you know, that interaction with people.
Yeah.
We don't want a victim. We want two people who are consenting to a situation in a dojo environment. That's what I'm talking about. We want two people consenting to a situation who are then prepared to push themselves, leave their comfort zone. And then, yeah, stuff might happen within that. You know, someone might, you know, get a whack in the face, or, you know, like but we're wearing protection. That's the control, you know, like it's not a bare knuckled, you know, zero protection environment. It's, we're protecting the striking parts of our hands so that, you know, it's a little bit softer on the face, and, you know, you're protecting your hands, and, you know, you've got shin and instep and things like that, you know, that everybody does when they're training.
Yeah.
You know, when you're competitive, well, that's different. And competitive martial arts can be violent, you know, like, because you are trying to beat that person, you're trying to win. And that's okay too, because again, both those people knew what they were up for. They both trained to do that. They had consent. They got in the ring, octagon, whatever it was, and they went at it, you know. And you look at the end of those things, you know, like, man, you've seen some battles, some violent battles, like between a couple of the, you know, UFC guys, or, you know, boxing fighters, or whatever it is, in whatever platform they're on, combat martial art, and they're bloodied up, and they've, you know, had a real, but they're getting, and they're racing, and they've, you know, even if there's been the shit talk at the beginning, you know, they love guys. I mean, that's all hype usually, but at the end of it, it's all right, mate. Yeah, it's all good, you know.
It is. It's so strange when you look at it. Like, you're sparring, you're going hard, everyone's all bloodied up, but as weird as it is, it brings people closer together.
Yeah.
The camaraderie, the friendships that you make. And I always think of martial arts as therapy.
Totally.
It's therapy. Like, your partners are like people that wear doctor's uniforms, but they're wearing a gi.
Yeah.
So they're like your therapist. So I go into a school, a trained school where there's control, and there's a measure of force that you apply in sparring. And it's so strange, maybe, because after you've had a hard spar, or if a wrestle in jiu-jitsu, you know, and you're going hard at it, there is that element of friendship that what it does.
Yeah.
And you see, and you made a good observation too, Shihan. You know, when you watch a UFC bout, they're hugging after a bout, and they're all bloodied up, and you know, and this is what I think is important, that I think for kids to try out, because it can cross over in everything else. not just in other sports, but just how they handle themselves in the real world.
Totally. Absolutely. Like, said the one common thing in life is always going to be adversity.
Yeah.
And, look, adversity it's a word. It's like, what is adversity? Well, anything that's hard, anything that you see as hard, that difficult or daunting or overwhelming, or anything that sort of comes in that, bracket of things is adversity. Now, the problem is where, going out of your house is adversity, or getting out of the chair becomes adversity. It's like, you can't have life like that. Someone, saying something to you in the street is adversity. It's like, you need to desensitize that as well. So that's the thing, isn't it? If you face adversity constantly, then the first time you faced it was adversity.
Yeah.
Now you're so desensitized to that. It's not adversity. It's just something you could do.
Yeah.
We all remember the first time we walked into a dojo. That was adversity. Just walking in there. That was something you had to overcome. I'm going to go and do this thing. And you walked in there and you really wanted to do it. Especially, I see it with kids. They want to do it. But when they walk in the door, whoa, there's an energy in that room. And these people are wearing this,
People do, don't they? They
Yeah.
have a false impression of what a martial arts school is like. I had a student of mine, Shihan. She was a sexual assault survivor. And she's been training. I just awarded her blue belt a couple of weeks ago. She'd been training me for the last 5+ years. And before she came into the school, she must have been driving around the complex for about an hour or something. She was nervous. She was apprehensive. She was so scared. She didn't know what to think. And then when she came in, she realized, wow, everyone's so friendly. This is not what I expected.
Yeah, because they bring that.
Yeah, people have this idea of, talking about controlled violence. Like, people from an outside perspective, well, I don't want to get punched in the face. I don't want to get all bloodied up and all this sort of stuff.
But no one's getting that on day one, like it's a staircase, right? Like, like if you keep taking one step at a time, one day you'll, you can walk to the top of the Empire State Building one step at a time. You're pretty high off the ground.
Yeah.
But you're not just going to be up there.
Yeah.
Like, it has to be one step at a time. And that's part of the conditioning and the desensitizing to all the adversity that's around you. And then, of course, life just fits in there somewhere, like what is adversity of life? Getting a new job, getting a job, passing a subject at school or whatever. Like, they're just things that, because martial arts is sectioned into gradings where, you were just mentioning, she's just got her blue belt, and everybody has a grading system where, you go from this belt to that belt and they all represent levels. Somewhere in those levels, whether you're, black belt has levels again, your first dan, second dan, in most martial arts, they have that. Somewhere in those levels, there's life that'll fit in. There's adversity within life that you would have looked at as adversity. But now, because you've done these levels of martial arts, the adversity's underneath you.
Yeah.
It's like, yeah, that's a challenge, but it's not too hard anymore.
Yeah.
Whereas before, it was like, man, it's so hard.
Yeah.
And if you had no martial arts experience, and I'm not saying the martial arts is the only form of, achievement, but it certainly is a nice, structured, easy one. It's one that you and I have used in our lives. And it's just so easy to grow someone to a point where what they consider adversity is now so high because their capacity is so great.
I love the analogy that you used, Shihan, when I did my black gear grading, and we had to smash through some tiles. And before we smashed through them, you said, this is just another obstacle. This is just something for you to break through, whether it be, and I reflect on that. I'm thinking it's not the actual part of breaking the tile. I think of it more so from an analogy in life, in breaking through plateaus, busting through obstacles, getting to the next level. And I reflect on that. I'm thinking, holy shit, there's a lot of wisdom into what you just said with regards to smashing through a concrete of tiles.
Yeah. Well, because again, that is put in that grading because we don't train that.
Yes.
You know, like you're not training this to break tiles.
Yeah.
There's no, so most things that we do, we train you up for it. We condition you for it. And so then, but it's not part of our curriculum to do. We don't, we're not Taekwondo. We don't do board breaks. We don't do a lot of that. We hit pads. We do other things. We have other mechanisms for creating our training environment. But breaking of the tile is not one. So, we stuck, what was it, 3 or 4 concrete tiles.
Yeah, brick tiles.
No gaps in between it.
Yeah.
But it's just, and we know that you guys are a sufficient level of martial artists. You've got sufficient power to sort of break this thing. It was going to take an effort. We knew you could do it. And so then, but then it's just, hey, you need to believe you're going to do this.
Yeah.
Because you're looking at a pile of, concrete tiles and you're like, well, what if I can't? Well, then you won't.
Mm.
So that little speech was just about trying to get you to believe that this thing is just in your way of what you want. So commit to it. Commit to this thing.
Yeah.
And you did. And I remember it was just,
a
pile of dust in the end.
Yeah.
But
it was just an amazing analogy on what you were talking about. I just reflect on it, and it's no different from any obstacle that you overcome in life.
Yep.
And it really did hit home for me. I'm not sure about the other guys, but I thought about that differently.
Well, that's I think what everybody takes from, especially from that grading, is it provides, there's so much test in that thing. I mean, that, to me, that grading, when I had a vision for it, was, it needs to be a test of your absolute furthest you can get out of your comfort zone. And it needs to be something where you are emptied of everything that you think you can do. And then we just ask a little bit more of you. So then you've grown at the end. It's like, I thought I could only do this, but I actually got to do that. And that's what that test is. And that's a real, again, that's one of the few tests that you meet the criteria and then you volunteer for.
Yeah.
There's no need to do that grading, right? It's a part of our culture where, you can go through your whole career with us and never have done that grading. You volunteer for it, you put yourself up for it. And it's a young man's grading for me. It's, that is providing that coming of age platform, where here's a test of everything you know in martial arts. It pretty much everything you knew, every technique, every pattern, kata, everything you knew. We asked you to do it, perform it on the day.
Yeah.
But it wasn't about performing it to the most, articulate detail. It was a simple thing. Like, we've had people do that test and they've got up to do one of their kata. And like I say, usually kata is about precise and, requirements of technique. But basically it was like, well, you just need to do this kata just to perform it like it's a battle. And they got up and they messed the kata up. And it's just like, no problem, just do it again.
Yeah.
And I really wouldn't have had a problem if mess it up again. I would have said, do it again. Because now you're starting to suffer because you're doing this kata, which takes energy.
Yeah.
And you're having to do it again. If you just got it right the first time, you don't have to do it once. But now you just haven't, and the rest of the grading is going to happen. The requirement for the rest of the grading is the rest of the grading.
Yes.
No, there's no discount. And now you're having to constantly do this thing. So for me, it's like, it's more about, you have to get the job done. You have to get it done to a certain level of proficiency. So obviously the pattern is the pattern. So you've got to be able to achieve that. But ultimately, I don't care if you make an error, because the error is going to hurt you, not the grading. The grading isn't about that. It's a different thing. And then, and you didn't know what was coming. That's the other thing. When you go and do a karate grading and martial arts grading, usually you know the criteria for it, right? Like, I've got to perform these things, this many of those, this many of, whatever. Like, how hard, how physical it's going to be. You've got to do, whether you're doing striking rounds or rolling rounds. I've got to go and, do, whatever, like a fight. You've got to go and do 3 5-minute rounds, 5 5-minute rounds. You don't turn up to a three round fight and then get told at the end, you got to do another 2. You know, that's not easily how it works.
Yeah.
But the black gi, there was no criteria.
Yeah.
There was no curriculum on how long it was going to take. And we kept, you wouldn't have known what was going on because you were just in the blur of what was happening.
Yeah.
Because it was kind of happening to you. You know, like we did all the technical stuff, you did all that thing. And then there was that moment where we did the tile break and we asked you to do that. But then even when you did the sparring, the rounds, those rounds changed. You didn't know how many you were going to do.
Yeah.
And then the rounds changed in length. Some of them were 2 minutes. Some of them were 1.5 minutes. Some of them were 3 minutes.
Yep.
So the rounds changed in length. Then the gap between the rounds, we would give you, you know, sometimes a minute rest, sometimes 30 seconds rest, sometimes 45 seconds rest. So that the cadence of those rounds, the length of them, everything just changed. It was constant. And you never knew when it was going to end. For you, it was just a battle. It was the closest thing I could put you guys in to understanding the chaos that life provides sometimes. It's not, you know, this beautiful structured thing that we can go.
Yeah.
It's chaos and it's adversity, and it comes at you when you're not wanting it to.
Yes.
And for longer than you want it to.
Not for any instance, Shihan, do I regret that grading. You know, it was hard. It was brutal. I was exhausted and, you know, I snapped my ACL.
Yeah,
I was completely fucked.
Yeah.
But you know what? It was one of the greatest gifts that I think that you had given me, because that hard work, that tenacity and perseverance to push through that enabled me to push through other obstacles, and even things that would have been difficult for me to do are obsolete now.
Okay, exactly.
That was one of the hardest things I've ever fucking done.
And that's what it's designed to be. It's designed to be this immeasurable obstacle that you do overcome. And then your life is based on that. It is everyone that's done that grading, you know, and unfortunately, you know, yours ended in a, even though you got through the whole thing, it was right near the end there. You obviously had that knee injury, which was, you know, it's just an unfortunate event.
Yeah.
But, sometimes things happen, but, you know, it gave you a platform that, like, so the next thing that came at you in life, it's kind of like, oh, well, you know, I can get over this. I got over that. I did that thing. It's always a benchmark in your life now, isn't it? And that's what it's designed to be. It's designed. That's why I think it's a younger man option, is because people, when they're in their 40s, you know, when they're 40-year-old, they've had some adversity that they've had to overcome in their life. Hopefully they've overcome it. So, you know, your life is in front of you at that time, a young man, and we give you this, again, it is controlled, even though, things can happen. There is a controlled version of what's going on, but it just is then this thing that you can, whatever happens to you in the rest of your life, you know, whenever that adversity does come at you, there's this thing that's right in the back, right in the core of your being that says, but have done worse. I have overcome that, you know, and that's a confidence inspiring event, I think.
100%.
Yeah. 100%. And I think everyone that's done that grading, because there hasn't been a heap of people do it. Everyone that's done it has changed. It's changed them. And I've seen it change them, like, mildly, or, you know, you've just seen it just make a little impact on them. And then I've also seen it have an absolute, like, backflip change to their life. You know, these people have just grown. And one of the guys, I remember everyone was saying, man, is he taller? He seems to have grown, you know, like, because he just stood straight. I mean, he's a 6'2" guy, you know, like, but he just stood up straight. He had a presence about him. And it was a really, that's an amazing event, I think, for those people.
Yeah. Highly recommend it, mate. I highly recommend anyone that is to actually do a black gi grading, because it was hard, it was tough, but I tell you what, mate, it really set me up for the rest of my life, that I could do difficult things without actually crumbling. And that's what I mean, mate, about martial arts, is voluntary adversity. Putting yourself in uncomfortable positions gets you to a point in life where you can just do anything, mate. You know, with hard work and perseverance, mate, and that's what it is.
Perseverance. Yeah, absolutely.
Mate, so where can people find you, Shihan? You're on the socials. You're on.
Yeah, we are. We're on socials. National Goju Karate. So we're at Morningside. We're at Annalee. We've got kids class at Cooper's Plains. We have a class out at Roma. So some of the good old boys out there want us to get on board. Yeah. So I mean, we're available at. I think most of all, people just need to sort of look into themselves and see what they're, what they're after in life. And I think karate could offer that to them, karate or martial arts. And I say karate because it's my main martial art in my life. But, any kind of martial art is going to be advantageous as long as it's not a McDojo's, as long as it's not just a line in someone's pockets and I think it needs to be, like you just said, a controlled adversity, something that you can put into your life and then slowly but surely increase the weight. You don't turn up to the gym and lift 100 kilos.
Yeah.
But you can get there.
Exactly, mate. Exactly.
How do you lift 100 kilos? Yeah. Start with 20.
Yes. A linear progression, isn't it? Yeah, it's a linear progression.
Yeah, totally.
Yeah. And have you got any seminars coming up or?
In Australia, no. I'm going to LA in a couple of weeks, and then I'll be teaching in Mexico. There's a seminar there, which I'm really looking forward to. They haven't actually run that seminar since before COVID, so it's going to be the first one back.
Fantastic.
It's going to be awesome.
Yeah, fantastic.
And they're great, like the Mexican people. They're a little bit, they sort of they don't mind a bit of it, so I love that.
Yeah,
some of those countries are, they're a different culture, and they're sort of their adversity is a different level.
Yes,
I love that.
Yeah. Fantastic, Shihan.
Thank you, mate. Yeah, it's been a pleasure.